I pushed open my parents' front door on that Friday evening, expecting the usual warm smell of dinner and the sound of the television playing in the background. Instead, I froze in the doorway. The living room looked like a tornado had hit a toy store. Plastic trucks, dolls, and building blocks covered every surface. My childhood photos that used to hang on the walls had been replaced with pictures of my sister's family. And there, sprawled across the couch like she owned the place, was Brittany, scrolling through her phone while her two kids screamed and chased each other around the coffee table. My mother appeared from the kitchen, wringing her hands nervously. My father stood behind her, looking uncomfortable. Before I could ask what was happening, my mother said quietly, "Jacqueline, honey, we need to talk. Brittany and Derek and the kids have moved in with us for a little while." I blinked, trying to process this information. Moved in? My sister lived 30 minutes away in a nice condo with her husband Derek. Or at least, she used to. Brittany looked up from her phone and smiled at me like nothing was unusual. "Oh good, you're here. Perfect timing. Derek and I have spa reservations tomorrow night at 7, so you'll need to be here by 6:30 to watch the kids. Don't be late." I stood there in the doorway, my work bag still on my shoulder, feeling like I'd just walked into an alternate universe. This couldn't be real. My sister had just announced, not asked, that I would be babysitting her children tomorrow night, in my parents' house, where she apparently now lived. "Excuse me?" I finally managed to say. Brittany waved her hand dismissively. "The spa. Derek and I desperately need some couple time. It's been so stressful with the move and everything. We haven't had a date night in forever." I looked at my parents. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. My father cleared his throat. "Why don't we all sit down and talk about this?" he said, though his voice lacked conviction. I stepped inside, closing the door behind me, and carefully navigated around the toys scattered across the floor. Brittany's youngest, Emma, who was 3 years old, ran past me with a juice box, leaving a trail of purple drips on the hardwood floor my parents had just refinished last year. Her older brother, Tyler, age 5, was jumping on the couch despite my father's gentle request for him to stop. We gathered in the dining room, though gathered is generous. Brittany stayed on the couch, and the kids continued their chaos in the background. My mother sat down heavily in one of the dining chairs. She looked exhausted, I noticed. There were dark circles under her eyes. "So what's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Why is everyone living here?" My mother glanced at Brittany, then back at me. "Your sister and Derek had some financial difficulties. They needed a place to stay temporarily, just for a few months while they get back on their feet." "Financial difficulties?" I repeated. "What happened?" Brittany finally sauntered into the dining room, still looking at her phone. "Derek and I decided to pursue our dreams," she said, as if this explained everything. "I'm building my influencer brand, and Derek is starting a podcast about entrepreneurship. We couldn't do that while being slaves to the corporate machine." I stared at her. "You quit your jobs?" "We're following our passion," Derek said, appearing from upstairs. He was wearing expensive-looking athletic wear and holding a protein shake. "Sometimes you have to take risks to achieve greatness." "We sold the condo," Brittany continued. "The plan was to live off the proceeds while we built our brands. But things cost more than we expected, and the money went faster than we thought it would. So Mom and Dad offered to let us stay here." I looked at my parents. "You offered?" My mother shifted uncomfortably. "We wanted to help. And it's working out great," Brittany said brightly. "Mom and Dad watch the kids during the day while Derek and I work on our projects. And now that you're in the loop, you can take the weekend shifts. We need Friday and Saturday nights for date nights and networking events. You don't have kids or anything, so you have plenty of free time." The presumption in her voice made my blood boil. "Brittany, I have a life. I have plans. I work 60-hour weeks. I can't just be your free babysitter." "It's not being a babysitter," she said, her voice taking on an edge. "It's being an aunt. It's being part of a family. Or are you too selfish to help out your own sister when she's going through a hard time?" "A hard time you created by quitting your jobs," I pointed out. Derek stepped forward. "Look, Jacqueline, I get that you're used to being alone and doing your own thing, but family helps family. That's what being part of a family means. We're all making sacrifices here. What sacrifices are you making? I asked. The room went silent, except for the sound of the kids fighting over a toy in the living room. Nobody answered my question. I took a deep breath. I'm sorry you're in this situation, but I'm not going to be your on-call childcare. I love my niece and nephew, and I'm happy to spend time with them when it works for everyone. But I'm not committing to every Friday and Saturday night. Brittany's face flushed red. You're being incredibly selfish right now. Do you know how hard this is for us? We're trying to build something meaningful, and you can't spare a few hours to help your own family? You made choices that led to this, I said, keeping my voice steady. Those were your choices, not mine. Unbelievable, Brittany muttered, shaking her head. Mom, Dad, are you hearing this? My parents said nothing. They looked miserable, caught in the middle, but neither of them defended me. I felt my throat tighten. I should go, I said. As I walked toward the door, Brittany called after me. You're going to regret being this selfish, Jacqueline. Family doesn't forget things like this. I didn't respond. I just kept walking. But before I could reach my car, my father caught up with me. Jacqueline, wait, he said quietly. I turned to face him. In the glow of the porch light, he looked older than I remembered, tired. I need to tell you something, he said, glancing back at the house to make sure no one was listening. The reason we agreed to let them move in, it's not just about helping. Brittany threatened us. She said if we didn't let them stay here and help with the kids, she'd cut us off completely. We'd never see Emma and Tyler again. My stomach dropped. She threatened you? She said it nicely, but yes. Your mother is terrified of losing her grandchildren. I am too, if I'm honest. So we agreed. But why am I expected to help? I asked. Why is this my problem? My father put his hand on my shoulder. Because Brittany needs help, and you've always been the strong one. You've always been able to handle things. Can't you just do this for us, please? Just help keep the peace. I looked at my father, this man who had raised me, who had taught me to stand up for myself, who had always told me to set boundaries. And now he was asking me to sacrifice my time and energy because my sister had made reckless decisions and was holding her children hostage to get her way. I need to think about this, I said finally. He nodded, looking relieved that I hadn't given a flat no. That's all I'm asking. Just think about it. I got in my car and drove home, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The entire situation felt wrong. I'd worked hard to build my life, my career, my independence, and now I was supposed to give up my weekends because my sister and her husband decided to play entrepreneur with no backup plan? When I got home to my apartment, I sat on my couch in the dark for a long time. My phone buzzed with a text from Brittany. Really hope you reconsider. The kids love their Aunt Jackie. Would be sad if they couldn't see you anymore. The implied threat was clear. Do what I want, or lose access to your niece and nephew. I turned off my phone and went to bed. But I didn't sleep much that night. I woke up Saturday morning to my phone exploding with notifications. 47 text messages. I rubbed my eyes and started scrolling through them, my confusion quickly turning to anger. Brittany had created a group text chain that included my parents, my aunts, uncles, and several cousins. The messages painted me as some sort of villain. According to Brittany's version of events, she and Derek were going through a terrible hardship. My parents were helping out of the goodness of their hearts, and I, despite having plenty of free time and money, refused to spare even a few hours to help with my own niece and nephew. The responses from my extended family rolled in throughout the morning. My Aunt Patricia wrote a long message about what family means and how disappointed she was in me. My cousin Jennifer chimed in, saying she always made time for family, no matter how busy she was. My Uncle Tom wrote that I should be ashamed of myself. None of them knew the full story. None of them knew that Brittany and Derek had voluntarily quit their jobs, sold their home, and blown through their money with no plan. None of them knew about the manipulation and threats. They just saw what Brittany wanted them to see, a struggling young mother and her heartless sister. My mother sent me private texts. Please just help out a little, honey, for me. I can't take all this fighting. Then I saw that Brittany had posted on social media. Nothing specific, but the message was clear. It's amazing how you find out who your real family is when you're going through tough times. Some people are too wrapped up in their own lives to care about anyone else. The post had dozens of comments from friends and distant relatives, all sending Brittany supportive messages and virtual hugs. I felt sick. She was spinning a narrative, controlling the story, making me the bad guy. And it was working. I decided I needed to see my parents in person, to have a real conversation without Brittany controlling everything. I drove over to their house that afternoon, hoping to find them alone. No such luck. When I arrived, the chaos was even worse than the night before. Emma was having a meltdown about something, screaming at the top of her lungs. Tyler was tracking mud through the house. Brittany had completely redecorated what used to be my old bedroom, transforming it into a princess palace for Emma. My father's home office, where he used to work on his woodworking projects, had been converted into what Brittany called her content creation studio, complete with ring lights and a white backdrop. In the kitchen, the refrigerator and pantry were stocked with expensive organic foods, special milk alternatives, and trendy snacks that cost 3 times what regular groceries would cost. My mother looked like she'd aged 5 years in the past 24 hours. My father sat in his chair in the corner of the living room, looking defeated. This was their house, but they seemed like guests in it. "Can we talk?" I asked my parents. "Alone?" "Oh, we're all family here," Brittany said, breezing into the room with a green smoothie. "No secrets, right?" "I'd like to speak with Mom and Dad privately," I said firmly. "About what? About how you're abandoning us?" Brittany's voice was sharp now. "Go ahead, say whatever you need to say." I ignored her and looked at my parents. "I'm happy to spend time with Emma and Tyler as their aunt. I'll take them to the park, to the movies, do fun things with them. But I'm not signing up to be free childcare every weekend. You two made choices that put you in this position. I didn't make those choices, and I'm not responsible for fixing them." Brittany slammed her smoothie down on the counter. "I can't believe how selfish you're being. You have nothing better to do. You're single, you're career-obsessed, you have no life outside of work. The least you could do is help out your family." "Career-obsessed?" I repeated. "I work hard because I'm building a stable future, something you might want to consider." Derek appeared, as if on cue. "That's really unfair, Jacqueline. Brittany and I are building something too. We're creating content, building brands, making connections. Just because it's not a traditional job doesn't mean it's not work." "How many followers do you have?" I asked Brittany. She hesitated. "That's not the point. It takes time to build an audience." "And how many podcast episodes have you released?" I asked Derek. He crossed his arms. "We're in the planning stages. These things take time." "Right," I said. "So while you're in the planning stages of doing nothing, my parents are supposed to house you, feed you, and watch your kids. And I'm supposed to give up my weekends too." "You really are bitter, aren't you?" Brittany said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "I think you're just jealous that I have a family and you don't." That stung, even though I knew she was just trying to hurt me. Before I could respond, my mother spoke up. "Girls, please don't fight," she said weakly. "I'm not fighting," I said. "I'm setting a boundary. There's a difference." "Boundaries," Brittany scoffed. "That's just another word for being selfish." I turned to my parents one more time. "I love you both. But I can't enable this. I won't be used." My father looked at the floor. My mother's eyes filled with tears. And that's when my mother accidentally revealed something she clearly hadn't meant to say. "But Jacqueline, you're already helping us so much with the bills. What's a little more help with the kids?" The room went silent. Brittany's head snapped up, her eyes suddenly sharp and interested. "Bills?" Brittany said slowly. "What bills?" My mother's face went pale. She'd said too much. I closed my eyes. For 3 years, since my father's hours had been cut at his job, I'd been quietly paying half of my parents' monthly bills. The mortgage, utilities, insurance, around $1,200 a month. I'd never told anyone because I didn't want my parents to feel embarrassed. It was my way of helping without making them feel like a burden. And now Brittany knew. "You've been giving them money?" Brittany asked, and I could practically see the gears turning in her head. She moved closer, her entire demeanor changing. The anger was gone, replaced by a calculated sweetness. Well, if you're supporting mom and dad anyway, the least you can do is help out a little with family stuff, right? After all, we're all living under one roof now. We're a team. Derek nodded enthusiastically. Yeah, and now that we're here, maybe you don't need to give them as much money. We can help with bills. We're family. We all pitch in. But I knew what he really meant. They wanted to benefit from my financial support while contributing nothing themselves. They wanted to mooch off the safety net I'd created for my parents. I looked at my parents, feeling betrayed that they'd revealed this information, even accidentally. I looked at Brittany and Derek, already calculating how they could exploit this new knowledge. And I felt something inside me harden. I need to go, I said quietly. Jacqueline, wait, my mother started, but I was already walking toward the door. Think about what we said, Brittany called after me. We're family, we help each other. I got to my car, sat behind the wheel, and just breathed for a few minutes. They weren't just asking for my time now. They were planning to take advantage of my money too. And my parents, whether intentionally or not, had handed Brittany the ammunition to make it happen. I started my car and drove home. And as I drove, I made a decision. This had to stop. I couldn't keep enabling this situation. Something had to change. And that something was going to be me. Monday morning, I sat at my computer and composed an email. I rewrote it 3 times, making sure the tone was clear, professional, and firm. Finally satisfied, I clicked send. The email went to my parents, with Brittany and Derek copied. In it, I stated clearly that I would no longer provide free babysitting services on demand. I was happy to spend time with Emma and Tyler when I chose to, as their aunt, but I was not available as free labor. I also gave my parents 30 days' notice that I would be discontinuing my financial support. I explained that I loved them deeply, but I could not subsidize Brittany and Derek's lifestyle choices. They were all adults, and everyone needed to make responsible decisions about their futures. I ended by saying I hoped we could maintain a healthy family relationship built on mutual respect rather than obligation and manipulation. I hit send and felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. The response was immediate. Within an hour, Brittany had forwarded my email to extended family members, adding her own commentary about how cruel and heartless I was being. She painted herself as a struggling mother just trying to survive, and me as a wealthy, selfish career woman who was abandoning my elderly parents in their time of need. My phone started ringing. Texts poured in. My Aunt Patricia called me directly, launching into a lecture about family loyalty. My cousin Brian sent a long message about how disappointed everyone was in me. Several relatives I barely spoke to suddenly had opinions about my character. I responded to a few of them, trying to explain the full situation, but most didn't want to hear it. They'd already decided I was the villain in this story. My parents called, and this time they were both crying. "We can't afford the house without your help," my father said, his voice breaking. "We'll lose everything, Jacqueline. Please, you have to reconsider." "Why can't Brittany and Derek contribute?" I asked. "They're living there. They should be paying rent, or at least helping with expenses." There was a long pause. "We can't ask them for money," my mother finally said. "They're going through such a hard time." "They chose to go through this hard time," I said, trying to keep my frustration in check. "Mom, Dad, they quit their jobs by choice. They sold their home and spent the money. Those were their decisions. But the children," my mother whispered. "What about Emma and Tyler? What about them? Their parents need to take responsibility for them. That's what being a parent means." My father cleared his throat. "Jacqueline, I understand you're angry, but you're being unreasonable. We need your help. We've always been able to count on you. And you still can," I said. "But not like this. Not when it means enabling Brittany and Derek to avoid responsibility. I'm sorry, but my answer is no." After I hung up, I sat in my apartment feeling hollow. Part of me wondered if I was being too harsh. But then I remembered the manipulation, the threats, the assumption that my time and money were theirs to claim. No, I was doing the right thing. But I needed to understand just how broke Brittany and Derek actually were. Something didn't add up. If they'd sold their condo, even after paying off the mortgage, they should have walked away with a decent amount of money. Condos in their area weren't cheap. I started doing some research. I looked at their social media accounts more carefully. In the past month alone, Derek had posted pictures of new golf clubs, expensive craft beer, and meals at trendy restaurants. Brittany had posted photos showing off new designer handbags and highlighted her latest skincare products, all high-end brands. These weren't the social media accounts of people who were broke. These were people still spending money freely. I dug deeper, checking property records online. Their condo had sold for $450,000. Even with a mortgage payoff and closing costs, they should have walked away with at least $150,000, probably more. Where was that money? I took screenshots of everything I found. The new purchases, the restaurant check-ins, the luxury items. I compiled it into a folder on my computer. Then I went to my parents' house to show them. It didn't go well. I knocked on the door, and Brittany answered. "Oh, you actually showed up," she said coldly. "Come to apologize?" "I need to talk to Mom and Dad," I said. "They don't want to see you." "Let me hear that from them." My parents appeared behind Brittany. They looked uncomfortable but not angry, just sad and exhausted. "Can I come in?" I asked. "I have something to show you." Brittany blocked the doorway. "You've done enough damage. You sent that horrible email, turned the family against us, and now you're trying to make Mom and Dad lose their house. I think you should leave." "I'm not trying to make anyone lose their house," I said. "I'm trying to show Mom and Dad the truth." "The truth?" Brittany laughed bitterly. "The truth is, you're selfish and jealous, and you can't stand that I have a family, and you don't." I pulled out my phone, ready to show my parents the evidence I'd compiled, but Brittany moved fully into the doorway. "You need to leave," she said. "You're harassing us." "I'm trying to help," I said. "You're trying to destroy this family," Derek said, appearing behind Brittany. "You think you're so much better than us because you have some corporate job and a fancy apartment. But you know what? You're alone. You have no one. And that's exactly what you deserve." My father stepped forward then. "That's enough, Derek," he said quietly. But he didn't tell me to come in. He didn't defend me. He just stood there, looking helpless. My mother was crying again. "If you won't let me in, at least look at this," I said, holding up my phone. "Brittany and Derek have been spending money on luxury items, new golf clubs, designer bags, expensive restaurants. They're not as broke as they're pretending to be." "Those are old pictures," Brittany said quickly. "You're twisting everything to make us look bad." "They're dated from the past month," I said. "You need to leave," Brittany repeated. "Right now, or I'm calling the police for trespassing." I looked at my parents one more time, hoping they'd say something, hoping they'd stand up for me or at least ask to see the evidence. But they didn't. "Fine," I said. "I'm leaving." I walked back to my car, got in, and sat there for a moment. Through the window, I could see Brittany talking animatedly to my parents, probably spinning whatever story would paint me in the worst light. I drove home feeling defeated. I'd tried to help, tried to show them the truth, and it had made no difference. 3 days later, I received a certified letter in the mail. My hands shook as I opened it. It was from a lawyer representing Brittany and Derek. The letter stated that since I had been financially supporting my parents for years, I had established a legal obligation to continue doing so. Withdrawing that support, the letter claimed, constituted elder financial abuse. The letter demanded that I continue my monthly payments or face potential legal action. But it got worse. The letter also included a formal request that I provide what they called respite care for my sister's children as part of family caregiving duties. It suggested that my refusal to help with childcare was harming my parents' well-being since they were forced to handle the responsibility alone. It hinted that Adult Protective Services might need to investigate whether my parents were being financially exploited and whether they were receiving adequate support. The letter was copied to Adult Protective Services. I read it 3 times, not quite believing what I was seeing. Brittany and Derek had actually filed a complaint accusing me of elder abuse. They were using the system, manipulating legal protections meant for vulnerable seniors, to try to force me to keep paying their way. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered. "Miss Jacqueline Harper?" a woman's voice said. Yes? This is Margaret Chen from Adult Protective Services. We've received a complaint regarding your parents, Richard and Linda Harper. I'd like to schedule a time to speak with you about the allegations. My blood ran cold. This was really happening. I was being investigated for elder abuse because I refused to subsidize my sister's irresponsible choices. Of course, I managed to say. When would you like to meet? After I scheduled the appointment, I sat on my couch, staring at the letter, feeling like my entire world was crashing down around me. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was a legal attack, and I had no idea how to fight back. 2 weeks crawled by, each day worse than the last. I hired a lawyer, which cost me $1,500 just for the initial consultation. He assured me the claims were baseless. Adult Protective Services would investigate, find no evidence of abuse, and the case would be closed. But the process would take time, and it would be stressful. Stressful was an understatement. A social worker named Margaret came to my apartment, a kind woman in her 50s with a gentle manner that somehow made the whole thing even more humiliating. She asked questions about my relationship with my parents, why I'd stopped the financial support, whether I had concerns about their welfare. I explained everything: the manipulation, the threats, Brittany and Derek's financial situation, the attempt to make me into free childcare. Margaret listened carefully, took notes, and told me she'd need to speak with my parents as well. This is routine, she said. When we receive a complaint, we have to investigate. But I can already tell you this doesn't sound like a case of elder abuse. It sounds like a family conflict. Still, the damage was done. Word spread through the family that I was under investigation by Adult Protective Services. Brittany made sure everyone knew, though she conveniently left out the part where she and Derek were the ones who filed the complaint. My Aunt Patricia called me, her voice cold. I never thought you'd stoop this low, Jacqueline. Your own parents. How could you? I didn't do anything, I tried to explain. Brittany and Derek filed a false report because I won't keep giving them money. That's not what I heard. I heard you cut them off without warning and left them to struggle. No matter how many times I explained, no one wanted to hear it. Brittany's version of events had spread like wildfire, and the truth couldn't compete with a good story about a heartless daughter abandoning her elderly parents. Then things got worse, much worse. Brittany somehow found out where I worked. I'd never shared that information with her directly, but she must have found it on my LinkedIn profile or asked someone. I was a marketing director at a mid-sized firm called Riverside Marketing Solutions. I'd worked there for 7 years, building my reputation, earning promotions, creating campaigns that won awards. And Brittany set out to destroy it. It started with online reviews. Suddenly, Riverside Marketing Solutions had a flood of 1-star reviews on various platforms. The reviews were vague but damaging. This company employs people with questionable ethics. Would not trust this business. Look into their leadership team. Company doesn't care about family values. Some reviews were more specific. Did you know one of their directors is under investigation for elder abuse? What kind of company employs someone like that? The reviews tagged our company accounts on social media. Brittany had created several fake profiles to leave these reviews and comments, each one carefully worded to avoid anything provably false but create maximum damage. My boss, Marcus, called me into his office on a Tuesday afternoon. He was a fair man, someone I'd always respected, but he looked troubled. Jacqueline, I need to ask you about something, he said. We've been getting negative reviews and comments about the company, and your name keeps coming up. Something about an investigation? I felt my face burn with humiliation. I explained the entire situation, every awful detail. Marcus listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded slowly. I believe you, he said. But this is creating problems for the company. Potential clients have seen these reviews. Some have expressed concerns about working with us. Our HR department is fielding questions. I need you to understand, this is affecting our business. I'm working with a lawyer to resolve it, I said. The investigation will clear me. It's all false. I don't doubt that, Marcus said. But the negative attention is real. I'm not taking any action right now, but I need you to fix this quickly. The company's reputation is at stake. I left his office feeling sick. Brittany wasn't just attacking me personally anymore. She was going after my career, my livelihood, everything I'd worked for. But she wasn't done. I'd been seeing someone casually for about 2 months. His name was Ryan, a software developer I'd met through mutual friends. We'd gone on several dates, and I really liked him. It wasn't serious yet, but it had potential. I came home from work one evening to find several missed calls from Ryan. When I called him back, his voice was stiff and distant. "Hey, I need to talk to you about something," he said. "I got some strange messages today from someone claiming to be your sister." My stomach dropped. What did she say? She sent me screenshots of text conversations, said she was worried about me, said you were under investigation and that you had anger issues. She made it sound like you were dangerous or unstable. Ryan, none of that is true. My sister is trying to manipulate me into giving her money and free childcare. She's lying. I don't know, Jacqueline. The screenshots looked pretty real. And why would your own sister lie about something like that? Because she's manipulative and desperate, I said. Please, let me explain everything. But I could hear in his voice that he'd already made up his mind. Look, I think you're great, but this is a lot of drama. I'm not looking for complications in my life right now. I think it's better if we just take a step back. You're breaking up with me because of lies my sister told you? I'm just being careful, he said. I hope you understand. He hung up. Just like that, over. A relationship with actual potential, destroyed by Brittany's interference. I sat on my couch, phone in my hand, and felt something break inside me. My family relationships were destroyed. My career was under attack. My personal life was in shambles. Adult Protective Services was investigating me. And through it all, Brittany and Derek were living comfortably in my parents' house, spending money they claimed not to have, while positioning themselves as victims. The investigation concluded after 3 weeks. Margaret called to let me know. As I suspected, there's no evidence of elder abuse. Your parents are not in danger, and you have no legal obligation to provide financial support. The case is closed. Thank you, I said, relief washing over me. However, Margaret continued, I do want to mention that your parents seemed very stressed during our conversations. Not because of you, but because of the living situation with your sister's family. They seemed overwhelmed but reluctant to say anything negative. You might want to check on them. After she hung up, I should have felt vindicated. The investigation had cleared me, but I just felt exhausted. My parents were 2 months behind on their mortgage by then. The bank had sent a foreclosure warning. My mother called, crying, begging me to reconsider helping them, just until Brittany and Derek got back on their feet. How long will that be? I asked. I don't know, she admitted. Have they made any effort to find jobs? Silence. Are they contributing anything to household expenses? More silence. Then I can't help, I said gently. I'm not enabling this situation anymore. But the worst was yet to come. 2 days later, my landlord called. Someone had filed multiple noise complaints against my apartment, claiming I had wild parties that disturbed other tenants. Additionally, he'd received an anonymous tip that I was running an illegal business from my apartment. I don't believe it, my landlord, Mr. Peterson said. You've been a model tenant for 4 years. But I have to investigate any complaints. That's building policy. Consider this a warning. If there's another complaint, I'll have to start eviction proceedings. My hands are tied. I don't have parties, I said. I'm barely ever home, and I'm not running any business from my apartment. I know, he said kindly, but someone is making these complaints. Do you have any idea who? I had a very good idea who. That evening, I went down to the parking garage to go to the grocery store. When I reached my car, I stopped short. Someone had keyed it. Deep scratches ran along both sides, through the paint down to the metal. It would cost thousands to repair. I checked with building security. The footage from the garage cameras for that time period was corrupted. Convenient. I sat in my scratched car in the parking garage and cried. I couldn't remember the last time I'd cried, but I couldn't hold it back anymore. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built, was being systematically destroyed, and the people doing it were facing no consequences. I drove home, barely seeing the road through my tears, and once I got back to my apartment, I just collapsed on the floor. My phone buzzed with another text from Brittany. Heard about your car. That's too bad. Maybe if you spent less time being vindictive and more time being a good sister, karma wouldn't keep coming back to bite you. She'd done it, or had someone do it, and she was taunting me. I curled up on my floor, exhausted, defeated, wondering if I should just give in. Maybe it would be easier to just do what they wanted. Give them money, babysit the kids, let them walk all over me. At least the attacks would stop. But even as I thought it, I knew I couldn't. Because giving in now would mean they'd won, and they'd never stop. I just didn't know if I had the strength to keep fighting. I called in sick to work for 2 days. I couldn't function. I barely slept, barely ate. I kept replaying everything in my mind, wondering where I'd gone wrong, wondering if there was something I could have done differently. My best friend Stephanie showed up at my apartment on the second day, after I didn't return her calls. I'd given her a key for emergencies, and apparently, she'd decided this qualified. She found me on the couch, still in the same clothes I'd worn the day before, staring at nothing. "Oh, honey," she said, sitting down next to me. "Tell me everything." So I did. I told her the whole story, from the beginning. Stephanie listened, her expression growing more and more angry. "This is insane," she said when I finished. "Your sister is literally trying to destroy your life." "And she's succeeding," I said flatly. "No," Stephanie said firmly. "She's winning battles, but she hasn't won the war. You're not giving up. We're going to fight back." "I don't have any fight left," I admitted. "Then I'll fight for you until you do," Stephanie said. She pulled out her laptop. "First, we're documenting everything. Every text, every email, every social media post, every incident. We're creating a timeline with evidence. If they want to play dirty, we're going to show everyone exactly how dirty they're playing." For the next several hours, Stephanie and I compiled everything. Screenshots of Brittany's social media posts, the threatening texts, the lawyer's letter, the fake reviews about my company, the messages Brittany had sent to Ryan, everything. Seeing it all laid out like that, I realized just how systematic and calculated Brittany's campaign had been. This wasn't just anger or frustration. This was deliberate, sustained harassment designed to break me. "We need more information," Stephanie said. "What do we actually know about their finances?" I showed her what I'd found before. The social media posts showing expensive purchases, the property records showing the condo sale. "That's not enough," Stephanie said. "We need to prove they have money they're hiding. Can your lawyer help?" I'd been avoiding calling my lawyer because every conversation cost me money I was rapidly running out of. But Stephanie was right. I needed professional help. I called him the next morning. His name was Thomas Bradley, a family law attorney who'd been recommended by a colleague. I explained what was happening, the continued harassment, the damage to my car, the complaints to my landlord. "This has escalated beyond a simple family dispute," Thomas said. "This is harassment, possibly stalking, defamation, and potentially criminal mischief. You need to consider taking legal action." "I can't afford a long legal battle," I said. "You might not have to. Sometimes just the threat of legal action is enough to make people back down. Let me send some cease and desist letters. And I recommend hiring a private investigator to look into their actual financial situation." "A private investigator?" That sounded expensive. "It's an investment," Thomas said. "If we can prove they have significant assets they're hiding while claiming poverty, it strengthens your position considerably. It also might be information your parents need to see." I authorized him to proceed, watching my savings account dwindle. But what choice did I have? The private investigator, a woman named Sandra Chen, was efficient and professional. Within a week, she had information that made my jaw drop. Derek and Brittany had over $90,000 remaining from their condo sale. The money was in an account solely in Derek's name. They'd been spending it freely, the bank statements showed, while telling everyone they were broke. Fancy dinners, shopping trips, entertainment. In the past 2 months alone, they'd spent nearly $8,000 on non-essentials. Sandra also discovered that they'd taken a weekend trip to a luxury resort 2 weeks ago. They'd told my parents they were visiting friends. The resort charged $500 a night. Most damning, Sandra found evidence that Derek had been doing freelance consulting work for his old company, getting paid in cash under the table to avoid reporting it as income. He was making money but hiding it. "This is fraud," Thomas said when I showed him the evidence. "They're misrepresenting their financial situation while accepting support from your parents. And if they're accepting any kind of government assistance, which they might be, this is benefit fraud." I stared at the documents spread across his desk. Finally, I had proof. Concrete, undeniable proof that Brittany and Derek had been lying to everyone. "I need to show my parents," I said. I arranged to meet my parents at a coffee shop, neutral territory where Brittany couldn't interfere. It took several phone calls to convince them to meet me without telling Brittany. We sat in a corner booth of the coffee shop on a Wednesday afternoon. My parents looked nervous, like they were doing something wrong by meeting me. I pulled out copies of everything Sandra had found. The bank statements, the resort booking, photos of Derek and Brittany at expensive restaurants that Sandra had pulled from their social media before they'd been made private, evidence of Derek's under-the-table consulting work. I laid it all out on the table between us. "They have $90,000, I said quietly. "They've been lying to you. They're not broke, they're not struggling. They're taking advantage of you." My mother's hand went to her mouth. My father picked up the bank statements, his hands trembling slightly as he read them. "This can't be right," my mother whispered. "It's all verified," I said. "The private investigator got this directly from financial records. It's real." My father's jaw clenched. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I saw anger in his eyes. But then he did something I didn't expect. He pushed the papers back toward me. "You hired someone to spy on your sister?" he asked. "I hired someone to find the truth," I said. "The truth you needed to see." "This is an invasion of privacy," my mother said, but her voice was weak. She couldn't stop looking at the photos of the resort, the fancy dinners. "They're lying to you," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "You're losing your house, you're exhausted, you're being used. And they have $90,000 sitting in a bank account. Maybe they're saving it," my father said. "Maybe they need it for emergencies." "They spent $8,000 in 2 months on luxuries," I pointed out, "while you can't pay your mortgage." My mother was crying now, quiet tears running down her face. "What do you want us to do, Jacqueline? Kick them out? We'll never see the grandchildren again. She's made that very clear." "So you're choosing to sacrifice yourselves to keep access to your grandchildren?" I asked. "How is that healthy for anyone?" "You don't understand," my father said. "You don't have children. You don't know what it's like to be afraid of losing them." "I understand that Brittany is manipulating you," I said. "She's using your grandchildren as hostages to get what she wants. That's not love. That's abuse." "Don't talk about your sister like that," my father said, his voice sharp. He stood up. "Come on, Linda, we're leaving." "Dad, please," I started, but he was already helping my mother out of the booth. "I'm disappointed in you, Jacqueline," he said. "This vendetta against your sister needs to stop. We raised you better than this." They walked out of the coffee shop, leaving me sitting there with all the evidence spread across the table, evidence they refused to see, evidence that meant nothing because they'd rather be manipulated than risk losing their grandchildren. I gathered up the papers slowly, my hands numb. I'd shown them proof, and it hadn't mattered. They were in too deep, too scared, too committed to the lie. 2 weeks later, the bank foreclosed on my parents' house. They had 60 days to vacate. My mother called me in tears. "Please, Jacqueline," she begged. "Please help us. We have nowhere to go." "Where is Brittany and Derek's $90,000? I asked. She didn't answer. "They have money, Mom. They can help you. They should help you." "They said that money is for their future," my mother whispered. "For the children's education." "And your home?" I asked. "What about that?" She had no answer. The stress was killing me, literally. I started having chest pains at work. Sharp, stabbing pains that made it hard to breathe. My hands would shake for no reason. I wasn't sleeping more than 3 or 4 hours a night. One afternoon, I was in a meeting with a potential client when the room started spinning. I tried to stand up, and my legs gave out. The next thing I knew, I was on the floor, and someone was calling 911. I woke up in the emergency room. The doctor, a young woman with kind eyes, told me I'd had a severe panic attack combined with dehydration and exhaustion. Your body is shutting down from stress, she said. Your blood pressure is dangerously elevated. You're heading toward serious health problems if you don't make changes. What's going on in your life? I laughed, which probably made me seem crazy. How much time do you have? They kept me overnight for observation. I lay in that hospital bed, hooked up to monitors, and stared at the ceiling. I was 32 years old, and I was literally being hospitalized because of family drama. Only Stephanie came to visit me. Not my parents, not my sister. They didn't even know I was there because I hadn't told them. You can't keep doing this to yourself, Stephanie said, sitting in the uncomfortable hospital chair next to my bed. Something has to change. I know, I said quietly. I just don't know what. That night, unable to sleep despite the exhaustion, I checked my email on my phone. There was a message from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line said, "You need to read this." I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam, but something made me open it. The email was from Derek's sister, Lauren. I'd never met her, and barely knew she existed. "Hi, Jacqueline," the email began. "I'm Derek's sister. We've never met, but I've seen the social media posts about the situation with your family, and I felt I needed to reach out. What Derek and Brittany are doing to you and your parents, they've done before. 3 years ago, they did the same thing to our parents. They moved in, claimed they were starting a business, mooched off them for over a year. They made my life and my brother Greg's life miserable, turning our parents against us when we tried to help. Derek racked up debt using our father's credit, almost destroyed our parents' retirement. By the time they finally left, our parents had to sell their house to pay off everything. I was blamed for not helping enough. Half the family still won't speak to me. I lost relationships that I'll never get back. But here's what I learned. Derek and Brittany are parasites. They find people who will support them, and they bleed them dry. Then they move on to the next victim. It will get worse before it gets better, but they always eventually leave when they find an easier target or when their current situation collapses. Please don't let them destroy you like they almost destroyed me. Fight back. They're bullies, and bullies only understand strength. I have documentation of what happened with our family, and I'm willing to provide testimony if you pursue legal action. You're not crazy, you're not wrong, and you're not alone. I read the email 3 times. Then I started crying, but this time they were different tears. Not tears of despair, tears of relief. Someone understood. Someone had been through this. And I wasn't imagining things. I wrote back immediately. "Thank you for reaching out. I would like to see that documentation, and I would very much like to talk to you." She responded within minutes. "Call me anytime. I'm here to help. Don't give up. Fight back." I lay back in the hospital bed, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. I was released from the hospital the next morning with strict instructions to reduce my stress, get adequate sleep, and follow up with my regular doctor. The hospital bills would be substantial, but I'd deal with that later. First, I had a phone call to make. I called Lauren, Derek's sister, as soon as I got home. She answered on the second ring. "Jacqueline," she said, "I'm so glad you called." We talked for 2 hours. Lauren told me everything that had happened with her family. The patterns were identical. The manipulation, the threats about grandchildren, the guilt trips, the way Derek and Brittany positioned themselves as victims while bleeding their supporters dry. "They destroyed my parents' marriage," Lauren said. "The stress was so bad that my mom moved out for 6 months. They almost divorced after 40 years together. All because of Derek and Brittany." "How did it end?" I asked. "Our father had a minor heart attack. That's what finally woke our parents up. They realized the stress was literally killing them. They gave Derek and Brittany 30 days to leave. Brittany threw a tantrum, threatened to cut off contact with the grandkids, all of it. And our parents called her bluff. What happened? Brittany kept the threat for about 6 months. Our parents were heartbroken. But eventually, Brittany came back because she needed something. She always needs something. The relationship is different now. Distant. But at least our parents have their lives back. I don't know if my parents have the strength to do that, I said. That's why you have to be strong for them, Lauren said. Show them there's another way, and make Derek and Brittany face real consequences. That's the only thing they understand. Lauren sent me dozens of documents. bank statements from when Derek had secretly used their father's credit, screenshots of social media posts where they'd painted Lauren and her brother as villains, text messages showing the manipulation, even a police report from when Derek had been caught lying about a car accident to claim insurance money. "He has a history of this," Lauren explained. "Financial manipulation, lying, using people. Brittany enables it and participates. They're a team." Armed with this new information, I called Thomas, my lawyer. "This changes everything," he said when I showed him what Lauren had provided. "This establishes a pattern of behavior. It's not just a family dispute, it's documented fraud and manipulation. We can use this." "How?" I asked. "We go on offense. Cease and desist letters for the harassment and defamation. A formal demand that they remove all false statements and posts. A demand that they pay your legal fees. And we make it clear that if they don't comply, we're filing a lawsuit that will make all of this public record, including their financial fraud." "Will that work?" "These people are bullies," Thomas said. "And bullies typically back down when someone punches back. Let's find out." The cease and desist letters went out the next day. They were strongly worded, detailed, and included references to the evidence we had about their finances, their spending, and their pattern of behavior with Derek's family. Brittany's response was predictable. She doubled down. She posted another long message on social media, this time naming me directly and making specific accusations about me threatening her, harassing her, and trying to destroy her family. "Perfect," Thomas said when I showed him. "She just gave us concrete grounds for a defamation lawsuit. She named you publicly and made false, damaging statements. File the lawsuit." "Are you sure?" I asked. This felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. "I'm sure," Thomas said. "It's time to make this hurt." We filed the lawsuit. The moment the papers were served, everything shifted. Suddenly, Brittany wasn't posting on social media anymore. Suddenly, she had to get a lawyer. Suddenly, she had to answer questions under oath. Suddenly, her finances were going to be examined in court. Derek's lawyer called Thomas within 48 hours, asking to discuss settlement. "She's scared," Thomas told me. "She should be. Discovery is going to expose everything. The hidden money, the luxury spending, the lies to your parents. If they're receiving any kind of assistance or benefits based on false financial information, they could face criminal charges." "I don't want to send them to jail," I said. "I just want them to stop." "Then let's settle," Thomas said. "But we settle on your terms." While the legal wheels turned, something else happened. A local news reporter named Jennifer Strauss reached out to me. Someone had tipped her off about the lawsuit, and she wanted to know more. Thomas advised me to talk to her. "Controlled narrative," he explained. "Right now, Brittany controls the story. Let's give the public the real version." I met with Jennifer at a coffee shop. She was in her 40s, professional and sharp. I told her everything, and I provided proof. The bank statements, the social media posts, the documentation from Lauren about Derek's history. Jennifer's eyes widened as she reviewed it all. "This is incredible," she said. "Can I verify this?" "Everything," I said. "It's all documented." The story ran 3 days later, both in print and online. Family drama goes legal. Woman sues sister for defamation after months of harassment. The article was fair, but factual. It included all the key details. Brittany and Derek quitting their jobs, the $90,000 in hidden savings, the luxury spending while claiming poverty, the manipulation of my parents, the false elder abuse complaint, the damage to my career and personal life. Jennifer even included Lauren's story, establishing the pattern of behavior. The article also included a statement from Adult Protective Services, confirming that their investigation had found no evidence of abuse, and the case was closed. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The comments section filled with people supporting me. People shared the article, many adding their own stories of being manipulated by entitled family members. A few people even recognized Brittany from her social media and started commenting on her old posts, calling her out for her lies. The tide of public opinion shifted dramatically. Extended family members who had attacked me started going silent. Some reached out privately to apologize. My Aunt Patricia called me, her voice small. I'm sorry, Jacqueline. I didn't know. I believed what Brittany told me. I should have listened to your side. Others weren't so apologetic. They just quietly unfriended Brittany on social media and stopped commenting on the drama. The family text chain that Brittany had created went silent. Brittany tried to respond with her own post, but the comments immediately turned hostile. People who'd once supported her were now questioning her. Someone had screenshot all her old posts, showing luxury purchases, and was posting them with captions about her claimed poverty. Within 24 hours, Brittany had deleted all her social media accounts. Then came the conversation with my parents. They'd seen the news article. Half the town had seen it by now. They couldn't avoid it anymore. My father called me. "We need to talk," he said, and for the first time in months, he sounded like my dad again. Not Brittany's enabler, but my father. We met at their house. Brittany and Derek were notably absent. My mother later told me they'd gone to look at apartments, finally realizing they needed to leave. My parents looked older, tired, worn down. My mother had lost weight. My father's hair had gone grayer. "We're sorry," my father said, and his voice broke. "We're so sorry, Jacqueline. We've been terrible parents. We let Brittany manipulate us. We let her hurt you. We were so afraid of losing the grandchildren that we lost you instead." My mother was crying. I knew something was wrong. I knew it in my gut, but I was too scared to admit it. And by the time I realized how bad things had gotten, I didn't know how to fix it. "Why didn't you tell us about the money?" my father asked. "If we'd known they had $90,000, we never would have let things get this far." "I showed you the proof," I reminded him gently. "At the coffee shop, you saw the bank statements." He closed his eyes. "I know. We didn't want to believe it. We wanted to believe Brittany's version because it was easier than admitting our daughter was capable of that level of deception. We talked for hours. Really talked, for the first time in months. They told me about the daily reality of living with Brittany and Derek. The entitlement, the lack of gratitude, the way they'd taken over the house, the destruction the kids had caused without any discipline, the constant demands. "It's been a nightmare," my mother admitted, "but we felt trapped." "You're not trapped," I said. "You can ask them to leave." "What if she keeps the grandchildren away?" my mother asked. "She might for a while," I said honestly. "But you can't let fear of that control your entire life. And honestly, do you want Emma and Tyler growing up watching their parents treat you this way? What lesson does that teach them?" My parents didn't have an answer, but I could see them thinking about it. The legal case moved quickly once Brittany realized she couldn't win. Her lawyer strongly advised her to settle. They couldn't afford a protracted legal battle, and discovery would only make things worse for them. The settlement terms were straightforward. Brittany and Derek had to post a written apology and retraction on their social media accounts, admitting they'd made false statements about me. They had to pay my legal fees, which totaled around $15,000. They had to agree to a restraining order, preventing them from contacting me or posting about me. And they had to agree to contribute $1,500 a month to my parents' household expenses for as long as they lived there. They signed without argument. But the real victory came a week later. My parents told Brittany and Derek they had to leave within 60 days. They needed to find their own place. Brittany threw the expected tantrum. She threatened, she cried, she accused. My father told me later that she'd pulled out all the stops, including threatening to disappear with the grandchildren. This time, my father stood firm. "If you choose to do that, it's your choice," he told her. "But we're not being held hostage anymore. You're adults with resources. It's time to act like it." For my parents, I negotiated with the bank. Using the evidence of Brittany and Derek's hidden assets and their new legal obligation to contribute, we got the bank to agree to a modified payment plan. My parents could keep their house if all the adults in the household contributed to expenses. I offered to resume my financial help, but at a reduced amount. $500 a month instead of $1,200. The rest had to come from Brittany and Derek, or they had to leave. They complained, but they paid. They didn't have a choice. Brittany and Derek found an apartment across town. It wasn't the luxury condo they'd sold, but it was decent. Derek got a real job at a marketing firm. Brittany gave up her influencer dreams and got a part-time position at a boutique. Slowly, painfully, they started acting like responsible adults. Not because they wanted to, but because they had to. My parents established new boundaries. No more free childcare beyond occasional grandparent visits. Everyone who lived in or visited their home had to respect their space and rules. The kids went to daycare, paid for by Brittany and Derek. The family dynamic changed fundamentally. It wasn't perfect, and it probably never would be, but it was healthier. The resolution at work came next. Marcus called me into his office a few weeks after the news article ran. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I should have stood by you more firmly from the beginning. Instead, I let concerns about the company's reputation make me doubt you." "You were protecting the business," I said. "I understand." "No, I was being a coward," he said bluntly. "You're one of our best people, and I should have defended you. To make it up to you, I'm offering you a promotion. Senior Director of Marketing, with a 20% raise." I was stunned. "Are you serious?" "Completely. The way you handled this situation showed incredible grace under pressure. That's exactly the kind of leadership we need. Plus," he added with a small smile, "the company actually got some positive attention from how we supported you through this. Turns out standing by your employees is good for business reputation. Who knew?" My story had spread through professional circles. People in the industry had reached out, expressing support and admiration for how I'd handled the situation. I even got a few job offers from competitors, though I chose to stay with Riverside. They'd stood by me when it mattered most. The social aftermath took longer to resolve. Some extended family members reached out to apologize. Others never did, just quietly resumed normal interactions as if nothing had happened. A few, the ones who'd been most vocal in attacking me, stayed distant. I was okay with that. I'd learned who my real family was. Ryan, the guy who'd broken up with me over Brittany's lies, reached out with an apology. He'd seen the news article and realized he'd been manipulated. "I should have believed you," he said when he called. "I should have given you the benefit of the doubt. I'm sorry." "I appreciate the apology," I said, "but I don't think we should try again." "Really? I thought maybe we could start over." "You abandoned me when I needed support," I said gently. "You believed lies about me without even giving me a real chance to explain. That's not the foundation for a relationship I want." He tried to argue, but I stayed firm. I'd learned an important lesson. I deserved someone who would trust me, who would stand by me, who would believe in me, even when things got messy. 3 months later, I met Jordan at a marketing conference. He was the creative director at an agency in a neighboring city. We struck up a conversation during a networking session, and it turned into dinner, which turned into exchanging numbers. On our third date, he brought up the article. "I read about what happened with your family," he said. "I hope this doesn't sound weird, but it was actually one of the things that made me want to get to know you better." "Why?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Because you fought back," he said simply. "You didn't just accept being treated badly. You stood up for yourself even when it was hard. That takes real strength. I find that incredibly attractive." We took things slowly, building trust gradually. Jordan never pushed, never demanded, never made me feel like I owed him anything. He respected my boundaries and my need to take things at my own pace. 6 months into dating, he met my parents. It went well. My parents were different now, more careful, more aware. They'd learned hard lessons about enabling bad behavior. My relationship with Brittany remained distant. We were civil at family gatherings, but we weren't close. I didn't trust her, and I probably never would. But I'd made peace with that. Not all family relationships can or should be repaired. Sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do is maintain boundaries and accept the relationship for what it is. I did develop a better relationship with my niece and nephew. Now that I wasn't being forced to babysit them, I actually enjoyed spending time with them. I took them to the zoo, to children's museums, to the park. I was their aunt, not their unpaid childcare provider. The difference was significant. Emma, now 4 years old, told me during one of our outings, "I like when you take us places, Aunt Jackie. You're fun." "I like spending time with you too," I said honestly. And I meant it. When it was my choice, when it was quality time rather than obligation, I loved being their aunt. 1 year after the whole nightmare began, I hosted Thanksgiving at my new apartment. I'd moved to a larger place, a 2-bedroom, with a real dining room. I'd needed a fresh start in a new space. My parents came. Brittany and Derek came with the kids. It was awkward at first, everyone careful and polite. But as the day went on, things relaxed. We went around the table sharing what we were thankful for, a tradition from my childhood that we'd revived. When it was Brittany's turn, she was quiet for a moment. "I'm thankful for second chances," she said finally, not looking at me. "And for people who love me enough to not let me destroy myself." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was acknowledgement. That was enough. When it was my turn, I said, "I'm thankful for boundaries, for learning that loving people doesn't mean sacrificing myself, and for finding out I'm stronger than I thought I was." After dinner, my father pulled me aside. We stood in my small kitchen, just the two of us. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. "I should have said that months ago. You stood up for yourself when we wouldn't stand up for you. You held firm even when everyone was against you. That took real courage." "I almost gave up," I admitted. "But you didn't. That's what matters." He hugged me, and I felt something heal between us. Not completely, not all the way, but it was a start. My mother found me later, helping with the dishes. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course." "How did you know? How did you know when to hold firm and when to compromise?" I thought about it. I asked myself a question every time I had to make a decision. I asked, is this choice honoring who I am and what I need, or is it sacrificing myself to make someone else comfortable? If the answer was the second one, I knew I was making the wrong choice. She nodded slowly. "I wish I'd known that when I was younger. I might have made different choices." "You can still make different choices now," I said gently. "I'm trying," she said. "Your father and I are seeing a counselor. We're working on setting boundaries, on not being afraid to say no. It's hard." "The right things usually are," I said. As the evening wound down and people started leaving, Brittany approached me. We hadn't spoken much during dinner. "Thank you for inviting us," she said stiffly. "You're welcome." She hesitated, then said in a rush, "I know I was awful to you. I know I hurt you. I was scared and desperate, and I took it out on you because I knew you'd always been the strong one. I'm sorry." It was the first real apology she'd given me. I looked at her, this woman who'd once been my little sister, my playmate, my friend. Life and choices had turned us into something else. Maybe we'd never be close again, but maybe we didn't have to be enemies. "I accept your apology," I said. "And I hope you're building something better for yourself and your family now." "We're trying," she said. "Derek's doing well at his job. I'm taking online classes for a real estate license. We're actually making plans instead of just drifting. It's different." "Different is good," I said. After everyone left, I sat on my couch with Jordan. We'd been dating for 9 months by then, and it felt serious, substantial, like it might really turn into something lasting. "That went well," he said. "Better than I expected," I agreed. "You did a good thing," he said, "giving them all a chance to be part of your life again, but on your terms." "I learned something through all of this," I said, leaning against him. "I learned that helping people doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. Real family doesn't demand that you destroy yourself for their convenience. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's self-preservation." "And?" Jordan prompted, sensing there was more. "And I learned that standing up for yourself is terrifying but necessary. Some battles are worth fighting even when you're exhausted. The people who truly love you will respect your boundaries. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is refusing to enable someone's destructive behavior." I thought about everything I'd been through: the harassment, the legal battles, the destroyed relationships, the hospitalizations, the fear and stress and exhaustion. It had been the hardest year of my life. But I'd survived it. More than that, I'd learned who I really was, what I was capable of, where my limits were, and how to enforce them. I looked around my apartment, at the life I'd built for myself. It wasn't perfect. There were still strained relationships, still lingering awkwardness, still consequences from the year of chaos. But it was mine. built on my terms, with my boundaries, reflecting my values. For years, I'd been the strong one, the reliable one, the one who fixed things and held everything together. I'd thought that meant always saying yes, always helping, always putting everyone else first. Now I understood that real strength meant knowing when to say no. It meant protecting yourself even when people called you selfish. It meant understanding that you can't save people who won't save themselves, but you can save yourself. And sometimes, that's enough. 1 year later felt like a lifetime. I was stronger now, with clearer boundaries, genuine self-respect, and a life built on my own terms. My career was thriving. My relationship with Jordan was solid and healthy. My relationship with my parents was healing. Even my relationship with Brittany, while not close, was stable. I'd learned the hardest lesson. You can love people and still protect yourself from them. You can be part of a family without being consumed by it. You can be strong without being a doormat. As I sat there with Jordan, looking out the window at the city lights, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because I knew I had the strength to protect myself while still loving my family. I'd learned that I couldn't fix everything, couldn't save everyone, couldn't make everyone happy. But I could save myself. I could stand up for my own needs. I could demand respect and walk away from situations that didn't serve me. And in the end, that was the most important thing I'd learned. I hope my story helps someone out there who's going through something similar. If you're facing manipulation from family members, if you're being made to feel guilty for having boundaries, if you're questioning whether you're being selfish for protecting yourself, let me tell you this: you're not. You have the right to set boundaries. You have the right to protect your mental health, your career, your life. You have the right to say no to people who demand you sacrifice yourself for their benefit. Standing up for yourself doesn't make you the villain, it makes you strong. And sometimes, the people who call you selfish are the ones who benefited from your selflessness. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who expected you to sacrifice yourself for their convenience? How did you handle it? What did you learn? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experiences might help someone else who's going through something similar. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Sharing stories like this helps others realize they're not alone in their struggles. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, someone who's being manipulated by family or feeling guilty for setting boundaries, please share this with them. Sometimes, knowing that someone else went through something similar and survived can make all the difference. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I know it was long, and I appreciate you staying with me through all of it. Sharing this hasn't been easy, but if it helps even one person find the strength to stand up for themselves, it's worth it. Remember, you deserve respect. You deserve boundaries. You deserve a life built on your own terms. Don't let anyone make you feel bad for protecting yourself. Take care of yourselves out there. Be strong, but also be kind to yourselves. And never forget that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone else's destructive behavior. Thank you again. Until next time, take care and remember that your peace matters more than anyone else's comfort.